It's another beautiful day for baseball in Los Angeles. And baseball podcast. Josh Schaefer and Blake Harris cover everything Dodgers right here on Inside the Ravine.
How is it going, everyone, and welcome to a brand new episode of Inside the Ravine. Joining me from a different state this week is my co-host Josh Schaefer. Josh, you're not in the Ontario Reign headquarters. You're not decked out in your beautiful Ontario Reign pull-up. Instead, you're wearing a soccer jersey of a team that I know nothing about, that plays a sport I know nothing about, in a state that I actually do know quite a bit about.
Yeah, in Arizona for the weekend, and today was Championship Sunday in the Premier League. What does that mean on a day when a team has already clinched the title for a week and my team, Manchester United, was playing for absolutely nothing? Well, it just means that a lot of games were on at the same time and a few teams were playing to see if they got relegated or not. So, yeah, I mean, that's how my morning went. 20 teams, 10 games all going on at the same time. My team won, and that's a good way to start off my Sunday.
Yeah, a bad way to start off your Sunday is by watching your team play at 8:30 a.m. on the Peacock app and losing a game that hasn't been lost in quite some time. But before we talk about today's game, the Dodger series as a whole, and kind of the season overall as a whole, make sure you guys follow Inside the Ravine on whatever social media app you guys use. We're on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, at Inside the Ravine. Make sure you guys go over there, give us a follow, and you guys can also watch and listen to the shows over on YouTube as well. And again, you guys can catch every podcast wherever you guys get your podcast. We're on Spotify, Apple, we're on the Odyssey app because this show is brought to you by Odyssey. But Josh, a lot to get to in today's episode because we haven't talked, I think, since that Cardinals series. So a couple series have happened, one good, one bad. But I quickly want to talk about today's game because today's game was unlike any that I've personally ever seen in my lifetime. Definitely unlike any you've seen in your lifetime. Josh, I don't know if you saw this tweet of mine, but today is the Dodgers' first loss while scoring 10-plus runs and hitting 5-plus home runs since June 30th of 1996. So the way the Dodgers lost today, it's the first time they've done it in nearly 27 years, and even more on that, the Dodgers since the year 2000, 265-2 when scoring 10-plus runs in a game. They were 35-1 since 2003 when hitting 5 or more homers in a game. But that just goes to show the beauty and the horror of baseball. You could do everything you possibly can do to win a game, and sometimes, Josh, it just isn't enough. And on Sunday morning, at the crisp hour of 8:30 a.m., it wasn't enough for the Dodgers.
Yeah, it's the first time the Dodgers have lost by scoring 10 runs in a 9-inning game since 2006. So, I mean, or in a 9-inning loss, let's say. I mean, any 9-inning game can end up going to extra innings. First time the Dodgers have scored 10 runs in a 9-inning loss since opening day of 2006. So I'll be a little bit honest with you. I was very surprised that fielder's choice ended up being the winning run for the Rays today, because just the way that the game had gone, I thought there is no way one run is going to be enough at this point. Whether the Dodgers win or lose this game, if the Dodgers come back and take a 12-11 lead in the top of the next inning, I don't know if that's going to be enough. Like a one-run lead this late in the game, I still don't think is what's going to do it, and it did. On top of that, honestly, in most situations, I feel like I probably would not have been a huge fan of this, but an 8:30 a.m. game on Peacock on a day when I was watching 10 Premier League games on Peacock at 8:30 a.m., it worked out pretty nicely for me. I had a couple of different screens going, and I had the Dodgers on, but yeah, I mean, just kind of a weird game. And, you know, when you're starting at 8:30 a.m., you know, Pacific time, and you're wrapping up a series, wrapping up an 11-day road trip, 11 days, 12 days, something like that. But I mean, you're wrapping up your third straight road series, and against another really good team where you had a couple of pretty good games against the Rays. But look, I mean, the Dodgers, especially over the course of this road trip, I think have shown that they can be pretty relentless. And I know that you had tweeted this morning too. You want to talk about a team being relentless, and that's the Rays. I mean, they just hit the ball. And I mean, every every game against the Rays, these last 3 games seem to be, for me, like every Noah Syndergaard start, where it doesn't really matter they're not hitting a ton of bombs. It's just base hit, base hit, base hit, double, base hit, base hit, double. Like, that's just how it went this series. Sure, they left the park a couple of times, but that's just how these 3 games went, they just hit the ball well. And you and I had texted about this morning. Like, they've got, just like every team, they've got their few dudes, right? But then they also have some like completely random players that are just crushing the ball for them. Like Luke Raley. Like, Luke Raley's having a heck of a season with the Rays. Everybody on the Rays is having a heck of a season. And it's just now the Dodgers got to see it firsthand.
Yeah, I mean, with the Rays lineup, it seemed like every guy, and this is what I texted to you, Josh. Oh, here's this guy who has a career-high 10 homers already after his previous career best was 3. Here's Yandy Diaz, who is now the best hitter in the American League. Here's Luke Raley, who has a higher WRC plus than Mookie Betts does. Oh, here's their backup catcher that has an OPS above 800. It's like every single guy. I mean, it just seemed like it was never ending. It seemed like every guy that was coming up, it got to the point, Josh, where I wasn't even paying attention to who was up in the batting order just because it was all one. It was like, this guy could be their number 3 hitter. This guy could be their number 3 hitter. I mean, there was like one point where some guy like ripped a double and I was like, oh, this is their number 9 hitting backup catcher who, again, has like an OPS above 800. I mean, having heard about this Rays team all season, it was like, okay, yeah, they're doing really well. They're leading in a bunch of these stats. But when you see them firsthand, it's like, yeah, I don't know how a team is going to beat them like in a playoff series at this point. I mean, the Dodgers barely, and when I say barely, they barely won on Saturday. I think the Rays had like the tying run on third base, the go-ahead runner on first. So this was a tough series for the Dodgers. I guess on a positive note, they were this close to actually winning the series against the Rays. I mean, again, like we talked about, anytime you score 10 runs, you should win. But yeah, this was a fun series. It was fun playing at the Trop. A few plays where the ball hit the AstroTurf and just went 20 feet in the air. So that park and field needs to be just abolished into the abyss and never seen or heard from again. So it was a weird one, Josh, but kind of a fun one.
I'm not sure if I missed this or not. Is the upper deck still open to the public?
Yeah, I have no idea. I think it's closed because they had everyone down on the lower bowl and the entire upper deck was closed. So I think they might only sell the lower bowl to make it seem more crowded. And then when the camera guy in the outfield pans, I was like, what?
That's what did it for me was the shot of the tank with all the manta rays, and it was that shot. The whole game, I was thinking, it is freaking packed, man. Like, oh my God, like finally the Rays, for being as good as they are getting like a rowdy crowd. Like even in the 9th inning, like they've got guys like standing up, clapping, like the whole lower bowl is like making noise. And they show that shot from the Rays tank of like the kids reaching in, touching them. And you're just like, the upper deck is completely empty. And look, like you and I have been to our fair share of like Arizona Diamondbacks games. And I'm not trying to like trash on the Diamondbacks here because we've seen that place full before too. But we've been to our fair share of Diamondbacks games where for those who don't know, the upper deck at Chase Field is like twice the size of the main concourse. Like it is just massive. And it's like, you've got like some people scattered up top, but like the lower bowl can be packed. Like your typical Dodgers D-backs game, I would wager the lower level, the whole first level of the ballpark packed, but upper level, there's like nobody there. Maybe a few people in the first few rows. Not like that at all in Tampa. I mean, at the Trop, the lower bowl was packed. There wasn't a single soul in the upper level. Not one. Not even a security guard from what I saw.
Yeah, so I just looked it up, and the attendance today was 21,000, which I feel like for a Rays game is just flat out absurd. I think I saw some tweet like a week ago that like some Tuesday or Wednesday game against the Jays, they drew like 5,000 or 6,000. So I guess, yeah, if you just decide to not sell the upper deck, pack everyone down in the lower bowl, and just tell the cameramen, do not pan above the press box, this place is going to look like a sellout every game. But yeah, the Rays playing at the Trop, that's a something. But yeah, Josh, the main reason
before we move on, I want to know. I'm going to look on one of my apps. I'm not going to tell you which one because they don't sponsor us. But I'm going to look very quickly and see if I can get upper level tickets. Okay, Tampa.
Now the question is though, if you can't get upper level tickets, like does that mean all the lower level tickets are going to be much more cheaper, because that's kind of not fair to cut out, the upper deck when you're not selling cheap tickets, and then all of a sudden every ticket down there is going to be pricey. I got a feeling, Josh, that you could probably get like a row 10 seat, maybe 15 or 20 feet behind third base. I want to say for like 30 or $40. Like, I think tickets down there are pretty cheap.
You can get party deck tickets on this specific app for party deck. Section 341 row B, it's in the party deck, $34. You can get press level tickets and press level box tickets for $42. But look, man, I'm looking at these photos and they don't even show anybody sitting in the upper deck. Press level reserved, $49. From what I can see, you can't buy upper level tickets. Like, I wonder if they don't sell them.
They probably don't. And they probably just, again, pack everyone down there to make it seem like, which I guess I kind of get makes sense, because there were times when I've seen Rays games when there might be like a couple hundred people up there. You might as well just say, you know what, just pack everyone down there, save security guards and workers up on the second level, have them all down there. So, hey, it's working. All the money they're saving, Josh, by not hiring people for the upper deck, they're putting towards this team that's probably a combined like $60 million for all these all-stars and whatnot. So
pretty much. I mean, it's based.
It's
working. The way that this team's playing is they've been an all-star team. I'm going to give this one last crack. I'm going to go to the Rays website and see if they have the official seating chart. And it's loading, but it looks like, if I'm correct, it looks like they don't sell upper level tickets. Like, it's like grayed out on the seating chart. But I'm trying to see if I can actually try to select tickets up there. And it doesn't look like you can. Like, the website seating chart, it's not letting me click on any of the sections, but the upper level is completely grayed out. So my guess is they don't sell upper level tickets, which explains why it was empty. But it seems like lower level tickets are reasonably priced, and there seem to be a lot of people there today. Just stop going to that center field camera.
Fan. Yeah, I want to be a Rays fan. I want to be a Rays fan and, seeing all these games in person. I did think it was funny at one point. I forget when it was. It might have been the 6th inning when their starting pitcher allowed like his 10th earned run of the game when the fans were booing. And I'm thinking, you guys have the best record in baseball. You're paying everyone like bupkis. What are we booing here? Why are we booing? I was hoping Kevin Cash would leave him in and this guy would throw like a 9-inning complete game while allowing 10 earned runs, just the way this thing was going. But Josh, I want to transition though, because the reason the Dodgers lost this game, it wasn't because of the offense. It was because of Gavin Stone. Now, he's made 2 starts since the last time we recorded, and things haven't gone pretty. The fact that today was actually his worst start says a lot, because his previous 2 starts were just horrible. He only gives the Dodgers 2 innings, allows 7 runs, 10 hits. It was essentially batting practice for the Rays those first couple of innings. And for opposing teams, again, it's only been 3 starts for Gavin Stone. Has not gone pretty. I think his ERA at this point is 14.40 through his 3 starts. That is horrible. I think Dave Roberts, following the game, said they're going to reassess the situation with Gavin Stone. But at this point, I know the Dodgers are in desperate need of starting pitching. I know we've gone back and forth about Noah Syndergaard. I know a lot of people on Twitter have their thoughts on Noah Syndergaard, but I guess the one silver lining with Noah Syndergaard is the fact that he's able to eat innings. Gavin Stone hasn't been able to do that, and in 3 starts, I've seen nothing encouraging that says, okay, maybe next outing, he can kind of turn things around. At this point, you got to send him down, have him get reps any way he can in AAA, and I guess call up literally anyone else at this point, because I would trust Noah Syndergaard on the mound with a start over Gavin Stone, which is saying a whole lot after what we've seen from Syndergaard this year.
Yeah, it's just not going well. The exact quote from Dave Roberts today was, given how today went, it's prudent to just reassess and make sure that whatever we do is best for Gavin and best for us. And right now, it just hasn't been good. And look, I know that we've only seen 1 game from Bobby Miller, so I want to preface what I'm about to say with the fact that the sample size with Bobby Miller is somehow even smaller than our sample size with Gavin Stone. But the Dodgers were telling us, and the reports were saying, that the guy who was going to get called up and was going to be put in the starting rotation was going to be Gavin Stone, because he was, he was most ready out of those pitching prospects. He was the one that they thought that they could rely on. And the reason why Bobby Miller wasn't going to be brought up was Bobby's not the guy yet. Bobby's not ready. And then when it was time and they needed him, they said, we're calling him because we need him. Well, through a couple of starts, Gavin Stone has not had it at all. And there's not really a silver lining with him other than the fact that he's young and it's been 3 starts, right? It's just, it's not there. And there hasn't really been anything else other than the fact that he's young and has time to grow. For Bobby Miller, in one game, filthy. He was disgusting. So now I'm kind of thinking, like, what do you do now? And look, I mean, you look at his 3 games, and it hasn't gone well at all. He's only lasted 10 innings over the course of 3 games. He's given up 16 earned runs on 23 hits in just 10 innings of work, and it's just not good enough. I mean, he hasn't gone more than 4 innings. First game, obviously, the 4 runs on 8 hits in 4 innings, 5 runs on 5 hits in 4 innings, and then today, 7 runs on 10 hits. The positive today, didn't walk anybody, but I mean, he had 7 strikeouts in his first 2 games, or 7 walks in his first 2 games. He doesn't even have 7 strikeouts across 3, and it just hasn't been good enough. So yeah, you're right. You know, we're at the point right now where you're thinking, like, and we brought this up on the last show too. Trace Thompson struggling, Chris Taylor was struggling. Like, what do you do? Like, who could you possibly call up if you were going to send somebody down? Well, right now with the injuries in the pitching staff that the Dodgers have, who is your next option? I think obviously in this case it would be Michael Grove, but right now, I mean, Stone, Miller, Grove. We've had Andre Jackson a little bit here and there. You know, Pepio's been hurt. Who is the next guy that you would give an opportunity to if it weren't Michael Grove just at this point in the season? So that's kind of where I'm at. But right now, there really hasn't been many, you know, reassuring signs from Gavin Stone through 3 games.
Yeah, you know the season is at its bad point when you're saying, man, we need Michael Grove back in the starting rotation, because this was a guy where you were kind of going, we need to get Michael Grove out of the starting rotation, but at this point, he literally is your best and probably your only option, I guess, unless you want to do Andre Jackson, but we've seen how that's gone so far this year. I think Michael Grove has made a couple of rehab starts in Oklahoma City, and based off of what I've seen in the tweets, it sounds like both starts have gone really, really well, and he's actually looked really good. So hopefully, Michael Grove is able to take Gavin Stone's spot in the starting rotation. Gavin Stone can go down, kind of work things out. I do kind of feel bad for him because it was literally worst case scenario in regards to his 3 starts. Like, you throw him against the Philadelphia Phillies for his major league debut. You then throw him in Atlanta against the Braves, and then you throw him in Tampa Bay against the Rays. So it's like, not even a bad team. I mean, who knows how he would have fared. Though. Yeah, so maybe if you were to, have him face like a below 500 team, things would have gone a little differently. But yeah, things haven't gone great for Gavin Stone. Again, it's only been 3 starts. I guess if there is any sort of encouraging sign from today, Josh, it's like you mentioned, he didn't walk anyone, which was kind of his biggest issue in his first 2 outings. And he did, I think, have 15 swing and misses, which I know in his couple starts, like you said, he hasn't even racked up 7 strikeouts in total. So he was getting a lot of swing and miss. It's just the Rays, with their voodoo magic and the magic of Luke Raley being an all-star this year, they were just raking on him. So hopefully he goes back down, but like you said, Gavin Stone was expected to be the guy that would take that spot in the rotation. But Bobby Miller, I mean, we haven't talked about him since, the last episode. What a debut. He goes into Atlanta, I think allows a run in the first inning, and I think we were texting going, yeah, this is the last thing we wanted to see. And then he pretty much shuts things down the rest of the way, goes 5 innings, strikes out 5, allows only 1 run, had a cockiness on the mound that I absolutely loved, stared down a couple of batters, and he'll be getting the ball tomorrow against the Nationals. And it seems like, again, assuming Gavin Stone goes down, they call up Michael Grove, Bobby Miller with, Dustin May out for who knows how long, Bobby Miller could have some runway in this Dodgers rotation and could honestly be in the starting rotation the rest of the season if, he pitches the way he did last week against the Braves.
Yeah, he absolutely could. And again, it's only been 1 start for him. And like you said, it's been 3 starts for Stone, and he hasn't faced really any struggling teams. I know the Phillies are below 500, but that lineup that he faced in his debut was Schwarber, Turner, Harper, Castellanos, Stott, Bohm. Like, come on. But it's been the other 2 opportunities after that where, yeah, you're facing good lineups, but you're not getting it done. And yeah, for Bobby Miller, he's only, pitched 1 game for the Dodgers. But there were some very encouraging signs in that, especially after the first inning going how it did, and then after that, just shutting the door against the Braves in a really, really impressive game for Miller. And he was. There's not a ton of uniqueness, I think, to his fastball. He doesn't really have much movement on it. He just throws it really hard. So at some point, you just have to continue locating well and hope that things go in your favor, because he doesn't have much touch to the fastball, at least not right now. And after that first inning, he threw a lot down the middle. Like things, didn't look. I don't want to say things look bad, but after the first inning, you thought, oh man, he could get teed off on a little bit against this team. But I mean, he just shut the door. 4 hits, 5 Ks, only 1 earned, and it was in that first inning in 5 innings. He was terrific. And it was exactly what the Dodgers needed. Because again, remember what we said on the podcast going into that series was when Bobby Miller makes his debut, sure, you know what, give up a few runs. You give up 3 runs, phenomenal. I'll take it. Got to go 5 innings. Give us 4 or 5 innings. If I'm Dave Roberts, I'm saying give us 4 or 5 innings and give us time to, let our bullpen get some rest. Because remember, this was coming right after that. First of all, you have the long series against the Cardinals. And then it's also coming off that series against Twins where the Dodgers had just tons of bullpen action as well. So give them some innings. And not only did he give them innings, but he gave them a great outing too. So looking forward to seeing him in his next outing coming up, next game. And at that point, maybe we'll reevaluate a little bit more after seeing Miller's next performance. But after just 1 game, signs are encouraging for him and not so encouraging for Gavin Stone.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like the hype train might even be building even more because they are throwing him against the Nationals tomorrow. So, I mean, who knows? It is baseball. Anything can happen. But if he goes out there against the Nationals and, shuts them down, yeah, there's going to be a whole lot of fun things to say about Bobby Miller just again because he looked the part. And the reason why the Dodgers turned to Gavin Stone over Bobby Miller was because I think Bobby Miller only had a handful of starts in OKC this year, wasn't really great at all, had like an ERA above 5, but he came in and he made the Braves offense look like one of the worst offenses in all of baseball. So really excited to see Bobby Miller. The Dodgers starting rotation, they desperately need it. But one thing I want to touch up on, Josh, before we take a quick break, and that's the fact that the streak is officially over. Trayce Thompson's 0 for 39 streak officially came to an end today, and he did it in style. I mean, this guy had not recorded a hit in about a month and a half, and he comes out today, records 3 hits. I think he drew a walk, so he reached base 4 times, hits a home run, and unfortunately for him, he gets pinch hit for in the 9th inning, so he couldn't get another at bat. But this has been a guy where, had he not had the game he had today, this would have been a huge talking point on the show saying, I think the Dodgers need to DFA him. I think they need to look for other options. But with this performance today, we've seen in his 3 home run game that when he's going, he could be a huge, huge asset in the lineup. And he was today, almost, again, won the game for the Dodgers himself with his production. So I guess with Trayce, Josh, he's bought himself at least a couple more weeks with this performance, just based on how everyone else was looking today.
Yeah, I mean, we were talking about it because who else is your next option? And obviously the Dodgers have got a few guys back, but when Michael Busch was up, Busch just didn't really get it done. He was pretty much just at that point at best a bench piece for the Dodgers. And right, that's what Trayce Thompson needs to be, but I think that Trayce is more reliable in the outfield than maybe Busch had been in the infield, depending on, how exactly the Dodgers want to use those 2 guys. But at that point, like, your next best option is Michael Busch as a bat in the lineup. And other than that, like, there's not really anybody else who I think the Dodgers are ready to pull up right now. I mean, you mentioned it recently. Who's the next best option at this point? Maybe Johnny DeLuca, who, last I saw had been doing pretty well after struggling a little bit in the minors, was starting to get it going a little bit. But, I mean, that's just not an MLB caliber option at this point. So a game like today is a little bit more encouraging for Trayce Thompson because, again, like, his last multi-hit game had to have been the 3 home run game, right? So it was a tough stretch. Today was the game, I think, to break out of that slump. with everybody getting hits, 21 combined runs. Today was the day to break that streak. And you hope that, especially with your schedule going forward, you get the Nationals next. After that, you get the Yankees, which will be tough, but you get 2 series at home coming up after breaking out of the streak, and, you know, maybe a little bit more favorable of a series at home against the Nationals than this long road trip. But something had to give for Trayce Thompson at some point, and finally it did.
Yeah, so he breaks out his, first multi-hit game since his first game of the season when he hit 3 home runs. So hopefully, it gets him going, because Josh, when we come back from the break, Trayce Thompson's streak is officially over, but there's actually another Dodger that quietly has been building his own streak that might be approaching Trayce Thompson territory before we know it. So we'll get to who that is after this quick break. All right, Josh, I kind of teased it right there about how Trayce Thompson, his 0 for 39 stretch comes to an end. I kind of really feel bad for him, because him going 0 for 39 officially set like the Dodgers position player record, at least going back to like the early 1900s. I think it's like the longest streak in 115 years. So now anytime there's a Dodger player that has an insane, streak, Trayce Thompson is now officially going to be the guy that always gets brought up by having the record, just because he got it by 1 at bat. So that does suck for him. But Josh, quietly, while everyone's been just paying attention to this Trayce Thompson streak, our guy James Outman, he's in a streak of his own. He is now 0 for 20, 0 for his last 20, has 12 strikeouts during that time, and since May 5th is hitting 143 with 28 strikeouts. So after winning Rookie of the Month for the month of April, I guess pitchers have kind of figured him out. And James Outman at this point, he's nearly an automatic out, and his at-bats are looking horrendous. I mean, he's going up there, and it seems like he's swinging and missing at every pitch. It doesn't seem like he's fouling anything off. And he looks like some fan they brought in from the top deck that just won, one of those fan appreciation day giveaways where you get to take, at-bats during a real game. So hopefully James Outman can kind of figure this out, because kind of with Trayce Thompson, Josh, this is what we talked about. You can't really DFA him because you don't have any options, in the minors. You can't really send James Outman down because, again, do you want to take a shot on Johnny DeLuca, who has, 10 games at AAA under his belt? So it seems like now, instead of with Trayce Thompson, the Dodgers kind of just got to wait it out with James Outman and hope that he can kind of steer the ship earlier than later after a bad 3-week stretch.
That was pretty harsh, Blake. I know what you're doing here. You're trying to, break up the juju here, because that's kind of been the trend for this season on this show. But you're right. I mean, he hasn't been good. He's 0 for his last 20, 10 strikeouts in 5 games. Not good. The problem for me over the course of the last few games is, one, he's come up in a couple of big-time situations where the Dodgers really could have used a hit. He came up, today in a situation where if there's a hit, the Dodgers are likely right back. I mean, they only lost by 1, but they're right back in the game. And then, I mean, you go back to, if you pull up his game log, I mean, you go back to that Twin series where sure he gets a couple of hits on that last in that last game against the Twins. In fact, finishes the game 2 for 4, couple of RBI or 1 RBI. I mean, he 4 RBIs. That was kind of, for me, it was like, all right, he's getting back on track, because the few games before that he was struggling as well. That game kickstarted a 3-game hit streak with a couple of RBIs, couple of runs scored, right? But still striking out a lot in the month of May, coming up in big situations and just not even having good at-bats. And that's been the big thing for me, is it's not just he's not getting on base, he's not getting hits, he's not hitting any home runs, he's not bringing in runs. The at-bats have been bad. I mean, the fact that he came up against the Twins in that 13 or that 12-inning game with a chance to do something and struck out. A chance to really, I want to say it was the 9th inning, could have won the game, or the 10th inning, could have won the game. And then, you go back to that series on the road against what? Was it the Padres series? I think it was the Padres series where they're on the road, and he came up in that 8th inning with a chance to really break it open for the Dodgers and went down real easily. And it's just some of the at-bats as of late have stood out to me of being not even competitive. So that's the thing for me. And I was thinking about this today, watching the game, watching him strike out in the 7th or 8th inning or whatever it was, thinking, look, but this is a guy that is going to be streaky this season. He just is. He was so good last year. He was so good to start the season. And we know what he can do. It's just right now, clearly he's behind on pitches. He's just not barreling up the ball. He's not making good contact. He's just not working good at bats. But the more at bats this guy gets, I think he's going to be okay. And of course, he's proven to be a pretty big asset to the team, other than just with his bat, because he's playing good defense. When he's on base, he's a fun base runner to watch. He just needs to have better at bats. And right now, maybe you turn the page once June starts, but the month of May has not been kind to James Outman, that's for sure.
Yeah, so it's still early in his career. Obviously, we saw what he's capable of doing in April. May has been very, very, very unkind, but hopefully, yeah, he can kind of figure things out, because with Trace having this stretch, Outman has been pretty awful for the entire month. Obviously, Jason Hayward and David Peralta, they'll kind of give you an occasional moment every now and then, but they haven't necessarily been lighting things up. And even Mookie's kind of, although he's been hitting a lot of homers, Mookie's kind of been, struggling as well. He's hitting, I think, 240. His OPS is down to like 830 or something like that. So the Dodgers' outfield production has been pretty minimal, over the last couple of weeks, and especially the month of May. So hopefully they can kind of step up, they can kind of turn things around. But Josh, one name that I did want to bring up, enough of, negativity, which actually, speaking of which, going back to my whole reverse jinx thing, I literally was starting a Trace Thompson article yesterday that I was going to finish today, because I didn't think he'd be in the lineup today, about how the Dodgers need to either DFA him or figure it out because of this stretch. So I didn't officially post anything. He turned it around. The other day, though, on Twitter, I did tweet about how Max Muncy was like 2 for his last 27 with runners in scoring position, and how awful he's been recently. And then I think he yesterday hit a home run, had a double with a runner in scoring position. Today he hit a home run. Now, technically, I will say, I'm not fully saying I reverse jinxed him, because I said it's with runners in scoring position. These homers that he hit were solo homers, so that doesn't count. Like, I don't look bad there, because no one was on base. So I will say that. But yeah, the reverse jinxes, again, I'm getting replies from people saying, you need to say something about this guy. Yeah.
We just gotta wear. I got a buddy at the office who does the same thing to me. He's like, "Hey man, this player's struggling. I need a podcast." I'm like, "All right, I'll see what we can do." But at this point, look, All-Star break comes around, we got to post a video of like, "Oh, said this on May 10th, next game, just fixing the jinx." We got to do it.
Yeah, I literally got a message yesterday from someone saying, "Blake, like, we need a thing about Trace Thompson." I replied saying something along the lines of, "I don't even think my magical powers can work on Trace Thompson. It's that bad." Well, clearly something can definitely happen. But Josh, a player that has just been, I think, fantastic for the Dodgers, outside of Freddie Freeman, has been their best hitter this season. And it feels like he is just going very, very, very under the radar. And that is JD Martinez, where we haven't talked about him a whole lot this year, because he did miss about 3 or 4 weeks with an injury. And then obviously we haven't done a show in the past week or so. So this is a guy, I did an article on him the other day. I'm going to read some of his stats in a bit just to show how good he's been. But another homer today, I think it was another multi-hit game, has like an 11 or 12 game hitting streak. And all of a sudden, I mean, for a Dodgers lineup that has had as many ups and downs as they've had, having JD Martinez right there in the middle, I think has been so undervalued by Dodger fans everywhere, because he's just been so good. But I don't know, it just doesn't feel like, I don't know. Every time he does something, my girlfriend always is like, "Why are you saying this?" Every time he like hits a home run, has an insane hit, I always go, JD Martinez? Like, with the question mark, as if I'm shocked. But I mean, he's been, like I said, their second best hitter so far this year.
Yeah, 10 bombs, 33 RBIs. He's hitting 276, and he's got an OPS at 901. Like, hitting right in the middle of the order has just been perfect for him this season, especially when other guys around him get hot. He's been that much more important, and that's when you start to see the RBIs, because you look at earlier in the season, some of the guys around him weren't hitting very well. Obviously, there was a few games when Will Smith wasn't in the lineup, so that's a guy who hits right in front of JD Martinez, not in the lineup. When Max Muncy was not hitting the ball early on very well, that's a guy that's right around that same part of the lineup, that there's a guy that's not on base for JD Martinez, or vice versa. And now that you've got guys around him that are starting to hit the ball a little bit better, and you've got JD. We said this going into the season, like, JD Martinez is just a consistent hitter. And it was last year or the year before that he led the league in doubles. And he just hits the ball to the gaps and parks it on second base. And all right, cool, bring me in. Things like that. Like, You get a runner on first base, he shoots one into the gap, like that should be a run. I mean, that's kind of just how it's been for JD Martinez this season. He's been super consistent. The deal that they brought him in on was, pretty friendly. We were both cautiously optimistic when they brought him in. And we thought, JD Martinez, like, maybe you think the guy's washed, but like he's had some good years while still flying under the radar. When he went to Boston, it was a big deal. It was a really, really big deal. And then his time in Boston, I think he kind of continued to just fly under the radar because the team wasn't very good at all. I mean, the year that he went to Boston, remember, that was the year that the Yankees also made some big moves. So it was kind of like, all right, is Boston going to be able to keep up with the Yankees? And then one year, the Red Sox were really good, and then vice versa. And then after that, just the team has not been very good at all when he was there. And he kind of flew under the radar for how consistent he was. Not saying he was remarkable. I'm not saying he was, an MVP caliber player by any means, but he was a consistently reliable player with the Red Sox. So even at the age of 35, he's a few years removed from being, a Dodger killer with the D-backs. And he comes over to LA and he's just been, again, a consistently solid bat in the heart of the order for the Dodgers. And yeah, maybe he's not that. I think maybe you look nationally and his national recognition, maybe he is a pretty decent name on the Dodgers. But the fact that this is his first year in the team and the Dodgers still have guys in the lineup like Mookie Betts, Freddie Freeman, Will Smith, Max Muncy, he might be a fifth or sixth name on that list that you think of when you think of the Dodgers, at least locally within the fan base. But he's just continued to be a consistent bat for the Dodgers. And he's been one of their most important players this season.
Yeah. I mean, ever since he got activated from the injured list, I think he had like a back injury. I mean, his numbers have been pretty much incredible. And yeah, like you said, Josh, even the last couple of years, it feels like JD's kind of flown under the radar. And that's something we talked about numerous times where, yeah, he wasn't hitting 330 and hitting 40 homers like he used to. But even last year, I think he like near the league lead in doubles. His WRC plus was still like 120. Like he was still a really productive hitter. And meanwhile, he comes over here and like I said, behind Freddie Freeman, he's been probably their second best hitter. But Josh, again, some of these things I wrote down, I do want to share with you and share with the audience because taking a deeper dive into his numbers just to actually show how good he's been. Because, yeah, you can read his numbers. I think you said he's like 10 homers, 30 RBIs, something like that, OPS of 900. So clearly those numbers are good, but just how good of a hitter has he been? This was as of the other day, so his numbers actually might be slightly better than they were when I wrote this article 2 days ago. So just every time he hits the ball, Josh, he's averaging 93.3 miles per hour off the bat. In his age 35 season, it's officially the hardest of his career. So JD Martinez is hitting the ball harder than he ever has in his 13, 14-year career, whatever it is. His expected weights above average is 96th percentile. And for those that might not know exactly what that means, expected weighted on base average, it takes your exit velocity, your launch angle, how you bat balls, all that kind of stuff. So it's a really advanced number, but he's 96th percentile. And among 256 qualified hitter, that's a tongue twister. Among 256 qualified hitters, JD Martinez ranks 10th behind guys like Aaron Judge, Ronald Acuna, Yordan Alvarez, Paul Goldschmidt, and Freddie Freeman, all guys that are going to be MVP candidates, so far this year. And even if you go beyond some other numbers, his expected batting average is 308, which is top 10 in all of baseball. He's currently hitting, again, I think 270, so it just goes to show he's been extremely unlucky a lot of the way. So JD Martinez, again, his numbers as a whole, you look on StatCast or whatever and see what his numbers look like, they're really good. But when you look into those advanced numbers that a lot of people like to take a look at, he's been a top 10 to 15 overall hitter through the first 2 months of the season, which, Josh, if I would have told you, back in February when they signed him, or I think it was December when they signed him, that after 2 months, JD Martinez would be a top 15 hitter in all of baseball, I think you would have easily taken that and not even questioned it. My guess would be.
Yeah, I mean, look at the month that he's having too. After today, he's got a 12-game hit streak, 18 hits in those 12 games, 5 home runs. I missed 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 RBIs in that stretch. And in the month as a whole, he's hitting 313 with an OPS at 984, and that's just this month. He's the hottest hitter on the team right now. And again, like he's been a top 15 hitter in baseball, and he's been maybe a top 5 player this month. And maybe even in the National League, he might be the player of the month for May. And I think that's something that we haven't even talked about once. I haven't even seen him thrown out there for having an incredible month. Looking at these stats right now, I mean, 313 and an OPS at 984 just this month. With that sample size, he should be considered for the player of the month.
Yeah, he definitely shouldn't. One final thing on JD Martinez I want to throw out there. This is what I had in my article as well. His expected slugging percentage. Josh, the league average expected slugging percentage is .414. Would you like to take a guess as to what JD Martinez is in 2023 so far?
The slugging percentage is .414 on average.
So expected slugging. So pretty much takes like all the outcomes and like the expected numbers.
Gotcha.
The average is .414. Would you like to take a guess as to what JD's is?
His expected slugging? 6 something, I'll go. Is that too high?
622. His expected slugging percentage is .622. That is the 4th best in baseball.
Because his season slugging is .586. So I was thinking it's got to be higher than that, but not like drastically higher, right?
Would you like to
I'd say
take
that's
a guess?
A pretty significant increase.
Would you like to take a guess as to which 3 players? So he's fourth best in baseball. Do you want to take a guess as which 3 players have a higher expected slugging than JD Martinez? And I'll give you a hint. All 3 are MVP candidates that'll probably finish like top 5 in voting.
Okay. National League and American League? Who are the 3 players we're looking at here?
I'll give you a hint. 1's American League, 2 are National League.
1 American League, 2 National League. 1 American League, 2 National League. I want to say, well, slugging wise, I'd say Judge is up there.
So Judge is up there. He's number 1.
Okay, so Judge is the AL, and then 2 in the National League. Well, I guess no, Yandy Diaz wouldn't be up there. That's who I would have guessed him if not for Judge. Expected slugging. There's no way. Let's go Jorge Soler. Is he up there?
It's not Soler. He's close, but he's not there. I'll give you a hint, though. One of the 2 guys, the Dodgers just saw him in a series.
Just saw him in a series. Okay. Just saw him in a series. It's not. Oh, is it Acuna?
Acuna. He's 1.
Acuna. And then is one of them Freddie?
Now, one of them's not Freddie. He is close, though, but not for this. I'll give you the final hint. He is a home run hitter that likes to hit a lot of homers and may or may not have won a home run derby or 2 over the last couple of years.
Oh, Alonso.
Pete Alonso.
There you go. So number 1 would be Judge, and is it Judge, Alonso, Acuna, and then JD Martinez?
Last I looked, it was Judge, Acuna, Alonso, JD. But again, this was, I think, on Friday when I wrote this article, so things might have changed a little, but that just goes to show, Josh, that again, out of all the sluggers, out of all the power hitters, out of all the great hitters in baseball, that's how close JD Martinez is. I mean, the fact that he's even being mentioned with Judge and Acuna and Pete Alonso and some of the guys I mentioned earlier, it's insane as to how good of a season he's having. Now, granted, he doesn't provide you anything in the field. It's just all at the plate, but I don't think JD Martinez, I don't think you could have gotten anything more than you were expecting out of the first 2 months for his 1 year, I think $10 million, I want to say. Bargain of a contract, I think you said a while back. So it's been insane. And I just wanted to show JD Martinez some love because it feels like he's being undervalued just a little. So,
yeah,
there you go.
He's been the Dodgers. He's been, at the heart of the order for the Dodgers. He's been their most consistent player. Or most consistent bat this season. And again, 1 year for $10 million. We said this early on without seeing him take a single swing yet. We thought that was going to be a pretty good deal. And so far, I think it's been fantastic.
Exactly. So shout out to JD Martinez. We're going to take one final break. When we come back, we're just going to wrap up the show with our overall grades on the Dodgers as they're now officially 1/3 of the way through the season. All right, Josh, we are back. And like I said, the Dodgers are officially 1/3 of the way through the season. So we're going to give a couple of quick grades just on how the team has overall looked through this first third. Overall, they're 32-22. So using my Arizona State education, I times that by 3, which has the Dodgers on pace for 96 wins. 96 wins, which, considering that this was a pretty bad road trip, I think the Dodgers finished 4-6. Obviously, they kind of struggled, against the Twins before they came out on this road trip. The fact that they're still on pace for 96 wins, I think, is pretty incredible. They are in first place by 2 games, but that's just because the D-backs aren't going away. But Josh, prior to the season beginning, if we would have been told that through 1/3 of the season, Dodgers would have 32 wins, the most wins in the National League, they'd be on pace for 96. I think we'd be pretty okay with that.
Yeah, absolutely. That's kind of where we both predicted them at the start of the season. And obviously the team has had its ups and downs, but for the most part, I mean, you think back to the beginning of the season when they just weren't scoring any runs and they weren't scoring consistently. I think that's changed. I mean, you look at today's game, they lose 11-10. The bats weren't the problem, and they haven't really been the problem for a little while. So, the team overall in more than one category, let's just say offensively, they're a top 5, pretty much a top 3 offensive team in baseball at this point. They're a tough team to beat. They've proven that. The pitching has been where the most question marks are, where the most the highest and lowest parts of the season I think have been for the Dodgers is with pitching. But yeah, I mean, through a third of the season, I think they're right about where we would have hoped they would be. Second best record in the National League, first place in the National League West, and so far, I think the team has performed pretty well. But obviously, they're performing well despite lots of adversity so far. So if the team were a little bit healthier, if the team got a little bit more consistent, pitching, then who knows how high they could go.
I mean, that's the craziest part, is the fact that after 1/3 of the season, essentially the entire starting rotation has been hurt, with the exception of Clayton Kershaw, who has kind of struggled the last couple of starts. Their bullpen has been one of the worst in all of baseball, but yet, again, they have the most wins in the National League, first place in the NL West. I think overall they're like the 4th best record in all of baseball, and it's just only a couple of games behind some of these other teams. So for the most part, that is something that you will take 10 out of 10 times. It doesn't feel that way. I think if you just go on Twitter and see how these games go and see the reaction from people, you wouldn't think that the Dodgers would have the best record in the National League at this point. But they've been surprising to me. They were 500 through the first 26 games, and we were kind of thinking maybe they're going to be an 85-90 win team, but they're going to be in the hunt. They're going to be in the hunt for the best record in the National League all season. Josh, my final thing from you, and I'll give mine too. Give me one thing after the first 54 games that I guess has encouraged you the most, like your biggest positive takeaway, and then I guess the thing that has discouraged you the most, your biggest negative takeaway through the first 1/3 of the season.
Negative takeaway for me on a broad playing field here, I would say, is the inconsistent pitching, because it has been a long time, this season. I think this is a big enough sample size to think the Dodgers need to do something at the deadline when it comes to pitching. And I know that we've got a ton of games, a ton of innings to see between now and then, but right now the pitching has not been good enough. And I know that guys have been injured, especially with the starting rotation, but the bullpen has not been good. Look, you've got some guys that have really just handled themselves well, that have continued to be reliable for the Dodgers. Evan Phillips has been lights out. Caleb Ferguson has been really good. Brusdar Graterol is somebody that I feel like we keep looking at. Like when he comes into a game late, you're like, oh boy, but he's been good. His numbers are pretty good. Like he's been somebody that for the most part has been reliable for the Dodgers. But players like Alex Vesia and Yency Almonte, especially Almonte, like guys that the Dodgers relied on in past seasons. Almonte was unreal last year. And some of these guys have not just struggled, they've been bad. And I think that has been very tough to watch for the Dodgers, because sometimes you just put these guys in and you just never know what you're going to get. And we haven't really felt that way watching, Dodgers relief pitchers in quite some time. And that's just how it's been this year, because you just never know what you're going to get with the bullpen at this point. So for me, that's been the most discouraging thing. The biggest negative for me this season has been the consistency in the pitching, and more importantly, the inconsistency in the bullpen. The most reassuring thing I think this season has been the way that the Dodgers have responded to the adversity. Two guys being injured and missing time in the rotation. Like, first of all, like when the Dodgers were without players like Tony Gonsolin, Dustin May, Clayton Kershaw, Julio for the most part, he's given up a lot of home runs this year, but Julio, like, they carried that weight. Then you get more of these guys out, and Tony Gonsolin comes back in, and since he's come back, has probably been the Dodgers' most reliable starting pitcher. And then you look at the offense and the way that the team was playing early in the season after dropping all those games to the Diamondbacks in the first 2 weeks and then struggling a little bit more after that and not hitting the baseball. Suddenly they just go on this long winning streak where they're just scoring all these runs. And now, even in the games that they've lost, they've been high-scoring games, especially as of late. You look no further than 8:30 a.m. this morning when the Dodgers lose 11-10. But again, that was the type of game when the Dodgers fall behind by a run in the 8th inning or the 7th inning, whatever it was, and you think it's not going to be enough for the Rays. Like, even though it was, like, that's been encouraging moving forward this season so far, is the way that the Dodgers have responded to losing guys in the lineup and not having consistent hitting and, losing pitching has been the way that they've responded to that and built on it and tried to run with it. And like I said a few minutes ago, who knows where the Dodgers would be if they had, one fewer injury to the rotation, one bullpen piece who's been more consistent. Because right now, like you said, top 5 team in baseball, number 2 team in the National League by a game or half a game, was the top team in the National League for, a week or so. Like, they could be even better than they already are. But at this point, like we've said this before too, kind of just stay afloat and see what you get once the summer months really start to roll around, because you're going to get guys back in the lineup. The team's obviously going to make some moves. And right now, their heads are above water. And it seems like they're just kind of struggling a little bit and they're just barely keeping their head above water. But in the grand scheme of things, the Dodgers have been a really good team.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy, kind of going off what you said there about how they've dealt with injuries, they've dealt with a bunch of roster shuffling, and I guess, yeah, my like biggest, I guess, encouraging takeaway is the fact that the offense has been like one of the best offenses in all of baseball. I think they're first in the National League in home runs. I think they're first like in runs scored. They're first in like WRC plus. They're first in a lot of categories, which big picture kind of doesn't make really that much sense, because outside of JD Martinez and Freddie Freeman, everyone else kind of just been streaky and struggling. Like Muncy, he had that stretch where he was fantastic, but for the most part, he's been bad for 75% of the season. James Outman has been horrible this month. Obviously, guys like Chris Taylor, David Peralta, Jason Hayward, Miguel Rojas, they've been underwhelming so far this season. Austin Barnes, I think, is still hitting like below 100. He's been awful. And somehow, some way, the Dodgers just continue to win games by scoring all these runs. So you would think that things are going to improve for a lot of these guys. They're going to be getting better, which means the offense is going to get even better somehow. So that's my biggest encouragement, is the fact that the offense has been as good as they have been, with, again, a lot of guys essentially outside of 2 being kind of bad this year. And my biggest disappointment, I think the exact same as yours, is the fact that the bullpen has just been bad. I think they're bottom 10 in almost every stat when it comes to reliever numbers in all of baseball. And that's been the Dodgers' biggest strength these last couple of years when they've been so dominant. They've had one of the best, if not the best, bullpen in all of baseball. So hopefully with guys coming back, things are going to turn themselves around. One final stat I had, Josh, that kind of just goes to show how bad the Dodgers, I guess pitching staff as a whole has been, especially this entire month, but kind of more so the entire season. Over their last 13 games, the Dodgers pitching staff has allowed 84 runs. That is the worst 13-game stretch since 2007. And even during that 13-game stretch, I want to say that they are either one game above 500 or one game below 500. So although their pitching staff is averaging 6.5 runs per game allowed, the Dodgers are still in every game. They're still, closing things out. And like you said, they're just somehow fighting adversity, and regardless of the situation, they're able to come through and deliver. So overall, very satisfied with the Dodgers' first 54 games. You know what they say, Josh? I don't know who said it. I don't know who, but they say it. You're going to win 54 games. You're going to lose 54 games. But what you do in those middle 54 games, that is what either makes or breaks your season. So whatever the Dodgers do in these next 54 games, pay attention to, because that could make or break the Dodgers season. But Josh, before we wrap things up, any final thoughts, takeaways from the Dodgers' recent road trip, or first 1/3 of the season as a whole?
Well, thank goodness they're coming home for a couple of series here before they go back on the road for about a week, and then they're back home for more after that. The month of June should be fun. Obviously, you end May with a team like the Nationals, who you'd think the Dodgers should secure a series win against. It's at home. After a long road trip, the Nats have been struggling a little bit. So bring the team home for a couple of series, and then you get the Yankees on a weekend series. You get the Giants at home on a weekend series. You get the Astros at home for a weekend series. I will be out of town for 2 of those 3. So out for the Yankees and the Astros, unfortunately. But look, big series at home. Those Yankees, Astros series, and the Giants, obviously, they're going to be sold out 3 straight games. So it's just good that the team's going to be coming back home for a lot of games in June. I think based off of just looking at the calendar, I'd say it's about 50-50 in the games at home and on the road, but some big series and some big games at home that I'm looking forward to watching.
Yeah, like you mentioned, I'm looking at the schedule too. The Yankees, Phillies, Giants, Astros, some tough opponents, but an overall much easier schedule. They play the Reds, they play the White Sox, they play the Rockies, they play the Royals. So hopefully the Dodgers can rack up some wins, continue to build off this momentum. But that does wrap it up for this week's edition of Inside the Ravine. Again, make sure you guys find us on social media. Whatever app you guys use, we're there. If there's other apps out there, we'll get our way on there at some point. But Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, at Inside the Ravine. You guys can listen and watch the full episodes over on YouTube if you're into that sort of thing. Just search Inside the Ravine. And make sure to listen wherever you guys get your podcast. Spotify, Apple, the Odyssey app. We're everywhere. But for Josh Schaefer, this has been Blake Harris. Thank you guys so much for listening. We really do appreciate it. And we hope you enjoy the rest of your day wherever you may be.